Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're not just looking at the American Revolution as, a single historical event. No, we're actually zooming out a bit because what becomes really compelling is how this wasn't just isolated, it was a spark that ignited change way beyond its immediate borders. So our core question today is this. How did the ideals from the American Revolution, specifically those really powerful ideas about liberty and rights, how did they ripple out, not just across the new American society, but, well, across the whole globe?
That's exactly right. Our mission here in this deep dive is to unpack how that bold statement, all men are created equal, really forced people to look at the inequalities right here at home. And then how it became this, well, undeniable inspiration for freedom movements far beyond America's shores. We'll get into the specifics, from the direct challenges to slavery, the calls for more political democracy, to the changing roles for women, and then crucially, its massive influence on revolutions elsewhere, France, Haiti, Latin America. It's quite a story.
Okay, let's definitely unpack this, starting right here.
Right.
You have these incredibly powerful words in the Declaration of Independence, right? Universal rights. But they're being said in a society that literally holds people in bondage. How did those words lead to it sounds like a moral reckoning regarding the inequalities within American society?
Yeah, it's fascinating how those ideals immediately shone this uncomfortable spotlight on the nation's own contradictions. The revolutionary talk, the rhetoric, it directly challenged the institution of slavery. You saw this moral questioning start, especially up north. Many northern states began the process abolishing slavery. Pennsylvania's Gradual Abolition Act of 1780 is a really key example. It was the first major legislative step towards ending slavery in the U.S. Now, it didn't free everyone instantly. It was gradual, hence the name. It outlined freedom for children born to enslaved mothers after the law passed, but only once they hit 28. And it also required registering enslaved people.
That's a pretty significant legal move, but it wasn't just about laws, was it? Sounds like people were grabbing onto the language of the revolution itself.
Precisely. You had figures like Anthony Benacid. He'd been an abolitionist since, 1760. He used Enlightenment ideas and Christian morality to argue really strongly against slavery. He condemned it, not just for the enslaved, but saying it was morally corrupting for the slaveholders too, directly hitting that hypocrisy. And you also had these incredibly powerful voices from the Black community itself. Prince Hall's Freedom Petition in 1777 to the Massachusetts legislature, that's a prime example. He took revolutionary rhetoric, natural rights, Christian morals, all of it, and applied it directly to demand equality and justice for free Black people. And what's really telling is that even the Continental Congress, early on, abolished importing enslaved laborers. That move actually had pretty wide support initially, but that momentum faded. Southern plantation owners quickly realized how tied their profits were to enslaved labor. The economic reality clashed hard with the ideals.
So this moral reckoning, it wasn't just about slavery then. Did that same revolutionary spirit push for broader political democracy too, or was that maybe a slower burn despite the rhetoric?
Oh, it definitely sparked a push for broader political democracy, though, yeah, the pace wasn't uniform everywhere. State legislatures, really pushed by these revolutionary ideals, started moving towards more universal suffrage, expanding the vote without needing, a title or being part of the nobility, aiming for a more equal system. And reflecting that, they also specifically abolished giving out titles of nobility or aristocracy. It was a real conscious effort to break from those old European hierarchies. Now, universal for the time, we have to be clear, didn't mean everyone. Women, non-property owners, they were still largely left out. But conceptually, it was a huge shift away from a system based on who your parents were.
Okay, so profound internal shifts, rights, political participation. But while we're talking about changes within America, there's another area often kind of overlooked that saw some complex changes. The role of women. Their contributions during the war were vital. How did that start to reshape talks about their place in this new nation?
Absolutely vital. Women managed households, farms, businesses, while men were away fighting. And some participated more directly, too. You had groups like the Ladies Association of Philadelphia raising money for the soldiers. Some women even dressed as men and fought. These contributions were significant. And that, combined with all the Enlightenment ideas floating around and women's own calls for bigger roles, led to this idea called Republican motherhood. The thinking was, women were essential for a healthy democracy because they'd raise sons schooled in Republican values, which, importantly, meant women themselves needed to be educated.
Republican motherhood. That's a fascinating phrase. It sounds, well, progressive for its time, maybe, but also kind of limiting. Did women immediately push back against that definition, wanting more than just raising good Republican sons? Or was it mostly seen as, a way to have influence?
You've nailed the complexity right there. Yes, it opened doors for education and gave women a kind of civic importance. But some women absolutely wanted more. Abigail Adams, her famous 1776 letter to John Adams, asking him to remember the ladies when making the new laws. That's iconic. She even half-jokingly warned they might foment a rebellion if ignored. Her plea, even with the humor, it tapped right into those Enlightenment ideas about natural rights. It was one of the earliest direct calls for women's political inclusion. And you have Judith Sargent Murray. In 1790, her essay on the equality of the sexes, she argued straight up for intellectual equality between men and women. She said perceived inferiority was just due to lack of education, not natural ability. Now, she influenced Republican motherhood, sure, but she went further, arguing for actual equality, not just better education to raise sons. That's early American feminist thought right there. So yeah, Republican motherhood, limited by our standards today, definitely. But for many women then, it was seen as a dignified way to contribute. It provided a path to more education and a new kind of importance in American political life.
It's amazing how these revolutionary ideas, once they're out there, just start crossing borders. It's almost ironic, isn't it, that the very war that championed liberty here caused such economic problems for France, America's ally, setting them up for their own revolution. Okay, let's zoom out now. How did America's improbable win against Britain and setting up this government based on natural rights, how did that become such a powerful signal to the rest of the world?
Well, the success itself was huge. Beating a global superpower like Britain, that got noticed, and basing their government on Enlightenment ideals, natural rights, individual liberty, it served as this incredibly powerful precedent. It essentially showed that these abstract ideas weren't just philosophy. They could actually work in practice. They could succeed. And that, understandably, inspired other movements around the world.
Right. And speaking of direct links, you can't really talk about the global impact without immediately looking at France. What was the connection there, especially since France helped us so much?
Oh, the connection is very direct.
Oh, well.
And yeah, full of historical irony. France, like you said, was in deep economic trouble, largely because of all the money they spent helping the American Revolution. King Louis VI tried to fix it by calling the Estates General, but that just blew up in his face. The Third Estate, basically 98% of the population was massively underrepresented and kept getting outvoted.
Oh, no.
So they walked out, formed the National Assembly. Then you have the storming of the Bastille, July 14th, 1789, became this huge symbol of fighting back against the monarchy and the aristocracy. And crucially, the document that came out of that, the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen, deeply influenced by the American Declaration of Independence, protecting basic human rights, aiming for a limited monarchy. You see the echoes very clearly.
Okay, so France is a clear case. Next, Haiti. A revolution with a totally different feel, but you're saying it was also inspired. How did those ideals resonate there, and what made that revolution so unique?
The Haitian Revolution, starting in 1791, is just, well, it's a truly remarkable story. It shows the universal power of these ideas. Haiti was a French colony, remember, with a huge majority enslaved population. They heard the cries for freedom from the French Revolution, and they interpreted it in the most literal, profound way possible for themselves. The enslaved population rose up, led by the incredible Toussaint Louverture. And against absolutely staggering odds, the Haitians won. They beat the French, established an independent Haitian government. This was unbelievably significant. It was the first successful revolution by enslaved people, the first independent black-led nation in the Western Hemisphere. What Haiti really showed wasn't just that these ideals could apply universally, but maybe their inevitability. Especially for those holding power based on denying those rights, it wasn't just another country gaining independence. This was people considered property, using the language of liberty to claim their humanity. That genuinely shook the established order everywhere.
Wow. Okay. And finally, how did these revolutionary waves keep going across Latin America? Was it like one big movement or more like a series of separate uprisings inspired by what came before?
After the American and then the Haitian revolutions, you really see what you could call a domino effect across the Americas. Latin American countries, they saw the success, they were eager for their own self-rule, and they started rebelling against their colonizers, mostly Spain and Portugal. Countries like Mexico, Peru, Venezuela, Chile. Throughout the early 19th century, they all successfully threw off their colonizers. It just shows how widespread that inspiration from the American example really was. The idea that a people could successfully demand their liberty and govern themselves. It transformed the whole hemisphere.
So wrapping this up, what does it all really mean for us today?
Well, if you connect all these threads, the American Revolution wasn't just, a historical moment that created one new country. It was like this powerful ideological earthquake. It profoundly reshaped American society itself, yes, but also the entire world stage. It sparked calls for equality and independence from corners nobody expected, forcing this huge reevaluation of basic human rights. It really reminds us that ideas, once they're articulated, once they're out there, they can take on a life of their own. They lead to consequences far beyond what anyone initially imagined.
Which it definitely raises a big question for you, the listener, to think about. How do powerful ideas, once they're unleashed like that, continue to shape societies? How do they keep inspiring change across generations, often in ways the people who first voiced them could never ever have predicted?